Go ahead and turn over in your Bible to 1 John chapter 5. I've got some things that I want to talk about this morning that can get a little confusing. And so I want to make sure that I go through them at a good pace where we're covering all the crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's, because I don't want you all to get lost in the midst of the study. We're talking about the historical reliability of biblical manuscripts. And so we're talking about those fragments and codices. A codice is a book that were collected throughout the centuries that came together to comprise our Bible, our New Testament. And so that's where we're going to be this morning. We're talking about a lot of history this morning. We're talking about things that were discovered throughout the centuries and their implication that they have on us today. So I'm really going to rely on that outline this morning, and so we'll be able to follow through together and to see these different things that we are talking about. 1 John 5, beginning down there in verse 6. Is there anybody who's not reading from a New King James? What are you reading from? Oh, King James? Okay. Does the King James have verse 6 and 7? 1 John 5? Yeah, it does. Anybody else reading from any translation other than the King James or the New King James? Y'all are making my heart so proud.
Didn't know some translations didn't have.
That's right. Some translations don't have 1 John 5, 6, 7, and 8 in them. And they put them down either as a footnote or they leave them out altogether. Yeah, and we'll discuss that.
Why would they leave them out?
But that's the class. That's what we're going to talk about in the class. If I answer your question just like that, then we've got 50 minutes left to do. Yeah, everybody's going to fall asleep before services. Right. There is a thing. I debated whether this was the best way to begin, because we're going to get into it later, but I think it is the best way to begin. There is a thing called a textual variant. Okay, so we have all these copies of the New Testament that are out there. And some of these manuscripts, we're going to look, they're listed on the back of your outline. Some of these manuscripts have 1 John 5, 6 through 8. But some of the manuscripts don't have 1 John 5, 6 through 8. So it's a textual variant. So some translations leave it out because it's not included in all the translations. And some, like the New King James and the King James, leave those verses in because it is found in other verses. I would want to have everything I could in the Scripture. You know, I'd want to have, I would go the line of the New King James, and I would want to include all of those things that are mentioned in the manuscripts, okay? So you have to understand that there are things called textual variants. So translations vary, you know that. They might say a little phrase, something a little different. Mark 16, they say that that's not in some manuscripts. Some have it, some don't. So usually, in fact, I'll see if the New King James does. Usually they put a little footnote down there. King James might not do it. Mark 16. So, verses 9 through 20, in some translations, will have a little footnote that say this passage, 9 through 20, isn't found in some manuscripts. Okay? So sometimes they write it, they actually put it in the text, hey, this is not found. The New King James that I'm reading from, Thompson Chain Reference, that's a plug. Thompson Chain Reference makes mention of it in its footnotes. Why do some have it and some don't? Why do some put, hey, these aren't found in some manuscripts? Because it's a textual variant. The manuscripts vary from manuscript to manuscript. And so you have to reason out and understand why some might not have it and some do. And that's textual criticism is what that's called. And it's very complicated. Okay, we're going to get into that right now. That's a good question. It's a really good question. So, if you look there on your outline, we begin there with the original manuscripts and talking about what that is. Bible students come to understand that we do not have in our possession the original letters of the New Testament. Those are called autographs. What we have in our possession are copies of the original. These copies are called manuscripts. We're going to look at manuscripts on your back page. We're going to see those in just a minute. So, yeah, it's different, like Codex Vaticanus, Codex Washingtonianus might contain different stuff. Yeah. So that's what we mean by manuscripts, okay? Greek manuscripts, there's over 5,000, this is on your outline, quality of manuscripts. There's over 5,800 complete or fragmented Greek manuscripts. That's a lot. 5,000 complete or fragmented. Other ancient versions of the Bible, there's over 10,000 Latin manuscripts. The Latin manuscripts are the ones that usually contain 1 John 5, 7, 8. Yes?
There's one I noticed you didn't write down, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
No, we did that last week. Yeah. Those pertain to the Old Testament. Yeah. Total manuscripts, there's more than 25,000 ancient New Testament manuscripts in all different types of languages. So that's a lot. That's a lot. The truth is the Bible has far more manuscripts closer to the original writing date than some of the great works in history. And this is one of the examples that I give you. Plato, his works. Plato wrote around, 400 BC, somewhere around there. And the earliest copy of his manuscripts that we have are 1,200 years removed from the original, the autographs. Well, nobody ever questions whether or not those are the actual works of Plato. They just take it for granted, even though it's 1,200 years removed from the original. Well, how do we know that's what Plato said? How do we know that, somebody didn't add to it or take away from it? You have all these things. Well, the biblical manuscripts, some of them are close to the original writings by just 100 years. Just 100 years. That's a big difference between 1,200 and 100. Yeah, that's right. So, and these are right there on your outline. With so many manuscripts, textual variants do exist. However, most variants are minor spelling word order and do not affect core doctrines. Scholars estimate the New Testament text is over 99% textually pure. How did they come to that? Well, it's what I said at the beginning. They compare the manuscripts. They compare the codexes codex is a book. They compare early style book. They compare, it's not a scroll. Codex isn't a scroll. They compare these manuscripts and these codexes, and they see where they're alike and where they differ. And then sometimes they go by quantity. Well, like when I gave you 1 John there, 5, beginning in verse 6. This is he who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ, not only by water, but by water and blood, and it is the Spirit who bears witness, because the Spirit is truth. For there are three that bear witness in heaven, the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit, and these three are one. So some of those manuscripts don't have that in them, but some of them do. And so it's what I was saying earlier. I like New King James and King James because they include those variants in the Bible, okay? They include it in there. Now, I know some of them put a footnote and everything, but they include them in. the people who are translating the manuscripts and stuff, King James, or the New King James, the people who put it together, who assembled it, they included those variants. The translators, included those variants in there. And to be fair, not everybody accepts those variants. So they leave them out. Not everybody has 1 John 5, 6, and 7 in their translation. Okay? And so you have to be aware of those variants. You have to be aware of those things. And it's a tedious process. It's a very tedious process. And it goes over. The argument for 1 John 5 is mainly based on the Latin copies that we have. You find 1 John 5, 6, and 7 in the Latin copies. And so manuscripts and codexes, and so that's why it's included in, which are later copies. That'll make sense when we get to the manuscripts here in just a moment. The collection of these manuscripts took place over time. They didn't find all of these things in 1 year, 1 day, 1 week, 1 century. It took place over time, the collection of all these manuscripts together. And as new things were discovered, then they were added to the collection of manuscripts, and things were seen about their accuracy and things of that nature. Go ahead and turn over to the back. When we talk about the manuscripts, they're found in various places at different times: Egypt, Palestine, Syria, Turkey, Greece, Italy. There's even a manuscript, a codex in Washington, D.C. Did you know that? There is. These various locations make collusion very difficult. They all didn't sit down around a table together and copy from one another. Not one church or religion contains them all. Okay? So they're spread out among different groups, different people. The key manuscripts, this is where I wanted us to spend our time. The key manuscripts. The first one is, and I tried to put them in year, listed in by years. The first one is the John Rylander's manuscript. It's also called P52. Papyrus 52 is what it stands for. This fragment contains words from the account of Jesus' trial before Pilate in the Gospel of John. This fragment contains writing on both sides, indicating it was part of a codex, a type of book, rather than a scroll. I've seen a copy of P52, seen it with my own eyes. You can't touch it. It's encased in, I don't know what that is, carbonite, plastic, resin, I don't know what it's encased in. But Oklahoma Christian, several years ago, had a traveling exhibit that came through for their students. And I was able to weasel my way into getting to see the collection that they had. And they had a thing of P52. And boy, did they have people around it protecting it, I'll tell you that. But I actually got to see this, so it was very interesting to me. This is a manuscript, so it means it's a scroll. It's rolled up like a scroll. And it is dated to 130 A.D. That's the John Rylander's manuscript. But some say that it can be as close as 25 A.D. At 25 A.D. As close as 130 A.D. As close of 100 A.D. So that's the same generation in which the New Testament was written. So that's a really big, important thing. And it contains that portion there of the Gospel of John. When you take what's written in that manuscript and you compare it to other manuscripts, well, guess what? It matches. So it shows the historical reliability of these things being copied. And you all know, and some of you didn't know it, so I had some interesting conversations with you. Jesus affirmed the Old Testament when he was here. He affirmed it. He didn't, when he went into the synagogue and read from the scrolls, he didn't say, oh, I can't believe you all are believing this. This is 1,000 years removed from the original that took place. He never questioned the reliability of the text. And he was reading from the Greek Septuagint, a Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. And so he never corrected them. He never said, this is corrupted, you can't trust it, you can't rely on it, which leads me to believe two things. One, the scribes who were copying it were very meticulous in making sure that they copied the things right. Very meticulous. The second thing is, can we not say it was the hand of God at work? Can we not say that God was playing a part in bringing about those things that he wanted, those manuscripts, those codices that he wanted? Can we not attribute that to God? I think we can. You all have heard me say this, a God who can create everything out of nothing. You mean to tell me he can't put 66 books together that he wants in the canon? You mean to tell me he can't do that? Well, I think he could. And so you have those things. But it's a very important, written around 130 AD, the John Rylander's manuscript. I didn't put where it was kept. I forgot to look where it was. I want to say England, but I'm not positive. Where at? Manchester, England.
Well, the Greek that this was copied from is very succinct language. I mean, the words were not, they had 42 meanings like ours. It was very, so that was probably God's hand too.
Yeah. Well, Koine, I got to be careful what I say is a work of God. I don't want to get off into the miracles and miraculous and things of that nature. But there's a wisdom in the Bible being written in the Koine Greek. It's a dead language. It's not it's spoken, people who speak biblical Greek, but it's a dead language. It's not being modified. It's not being updated. English is a modern language that's still fluid. Years ago, fax machine wasn't in the directory, but now it's there. Years ago, ginormous. I don't know if you say ginormous. I say ginormous all the time. That was a word that wasn't in there 20 years ago. It just came about. So English is very fluid, still happening. Koine Greek is dead. There's no modifications being made. There's no new, well, maybe this word means this or maybe it meant that. It means what it meant in the first century. It means the same thing today. So that adds to the reliability that we can trust what these Greek manuscripts are saying, because they're not going to change. They're not going to have an updated, you're never going to find fax machine in biblical Greek, Koine Greek. I think that could be the wisdom of God at play. I want to encase this language that the Bible is written in, and I don't want it to change, so that we can keep it down to what a word means, right? What a word means. There's a thing, I got it in my office. Trying to think of the name of it. BDA, Bauer, Danker, Art, Gingrich, BDAG. It's basically, it's not a dictionary. Well, maybe it is kind of a dictionary. It's a book that tells you how words were used in the Bible and in ancient society. It shows you, okay, this word baptism, here's how it was used in the Bible, immersion. Here's how it was used in classical writing. It was immersion. And so you can make an argument saying, see, when people back then heard the word baptizo, they would be thinking immersion, because that's what it meant to them during that time period. So that's a long answer to somebody who asked a short question. So you have that there. So it's in England, and some of these are loaned out in sections and pieces. So you can have part of, well, like it was at Oklahoma Christian. That's not they didn't bring the entirety of the John Rylander's manuscript with them. They just bring parts and they loan them out different places. The second one, they're written around AD 200, is the Chester Beatty Papyri. And it contains the oldest known text of the book of Revelation. Isn't that interesting? So you have things like Codex Vaticanus, these are the big ones, Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Alexandrinus. They have Revelation, but they don't have the oldest copy of the book of Revelation in them. So this again shows how these variants work. So this makes it very important to have the known oldest copy of the book of Revelation, and you can test the accuracy of it, comparing it to other translations, other manuscripts, and seeing how it matches or how it might differ. It's in Dublin, Ireland, and it's thought by many to be collected by dealers in illegal antiquities. Look, y'all, a lot of these things were gotten by trickery. A lot of them were. When we talk about Tischendorf down here in a minute, you'll see. But a lot of them was downplayed what it was, and that's really not important, and they knew it was, so they got it at a cheap price, so the person gave it to them. A lot of these things were collected that way. Yeah, they did. They did. Who was it? Let me look on here. Yeah, it's the next one, the Bodmer Papyrus, 150 to 200 AD. This was a gentleman named Bodmer who amassed a collection of the world's best books and early writings beginning at the age of 16. So he made it his goal to search for books in antiquity. And while he was doing that, he also collected Bible fragments of manuscripts or codices. And he had a pretty good collection that's all been put together. He started when he was 16. He died in 1971. So really current research that he was doing and gathering these things together was pretty current. It contains most of John's Gospel. This codex is just 1 century removed from the original autographs. That's pretty impressive. So the World War II generation that went through World War II, I would not be the World War II generation, of course, but I could write a book about the World War II generation, and that'd be 1 generation removed from the generation before me. My mom's the World War II generation, and then there's me. And so that's how close the writing would be. You know, it's 80 years is not a long time for World War II to be over. 80 years is nothing. That's like that. So you could write about World War II, a generation removed, and still have a way to check the accuracy of what I wrote, still have the time to interview people who were there for that and saw that thing to compare it to what I'm writing. You can verify those things. Well, that's the way a lot of the writings of the New Testament were. When Paul talks about 500 people saw Jesus alive, some had fallen asleep, he said, but others are alive. Go talk to them. Go see. You can research it. Go ask this person if he saw a resurrected Lord. And it leads to the credibility of what Paul wrote. You know, it leads to the credibility. And it's right there in that history in which these things took place. So people could research them and understand them. If you want to see that General Patton didn't take place in D-Day, go back and research it. Go back and talk to people who knew Patton wasn't in the D-Day invasion. Go back and talk to them and research it. You can do that. So it's the same way the Bible works with a lot of these things that are written. And that's when we've been talking about the historical accuracy of the New Testament. It's what the first 5 lessons we've done has been talking about. Okay? So these things could be researched. They could be validated. People could understand whether they were true or not. So that's the Bodmer Papyrus. The next one gets into the big codices, the next 3. The first one is the Codex Sinaiticus. And why do you think it's called Sinaiticus? It came from a monastery that sits at the base of Mount Sinai. And so researchers were at this monastery. They were looking at their library, and they started discovering all these pages. And they began to put them together, and they realized, wait a minute, this is the New Testament. We're reading the New Testament. And so they began to collect those things at the monastery and put them together. Of course, they didn't have every page of every book. They didn't have all those, but they began to put them together, and it became the Codex Sinaiticus. It's one of the oldest complete copies of the New Testament. Complete copy. So 27 books. Matthew through Revelation, 27 books, and it's one of the oldest copies. So when we talk about textual variants, so since this is said to be one of the oldest copies, or the oldest copy, then you can take this manuscript and you can compare it to other manuscripts and you can see where they differ, right? The closer you get to the original, those are called the autographs, the closer you get to the autographs, the better it is to help you understand those that are further removed. Do the words match up? Are they talking about the same accounts, the same stories? Is this older one including something in it that this young one includes something in it that the oldest one doesn't? And so you begin to put those variants together and you come to an understanding. 325, 360 AD is close. As I mentioned, it was discovered at St. Catherine's Monastery in Sinai. So there's a lot of history there. The next one is the Codex Vaticanus, dating from 325 to 350 AD. And it's held in the Vatican Library. So listen, y'all. The Vatican has a wonderful library. Wonderful. And they have ancient writings. Some of the things people go, and this is a good example, that Codex Vaticanus was found in the Vatican Library. Just collections of things that have been put together and were kept. And people go through these things. They archive them. They read these things. Excellent, excellent library. Good luck ever getting into it. It's not going to happen. You got to be a scholar. You got to have all kinds of letters after your name. You have to be underwritten by somebody or some organization. But they have a wonderful library. Who knows what other manuscripts might be in there, lost, that they are going to discover. It's very good library, and it's one of the most important early Greek manuscripts. One of the most important early Greek manuscripts. So you can't underestimate its value. Okay, Codex Vaticanus. The next one is the Codex Alexandrinus, and that was found in Alexandria, so top part of Africa, and it's one of the most important, or it's resides in the British Museum, and it's nearly complete Bible in Greek. So it doesn't contain everything, every book, nearly complete. And again, it's looking for this ancient Greek and things of that nature that they have. Alexandrinus, Vaticanus, and Sinaiticus are usually the text, the codexes that most of your translations today are based off of. Okay? Those are the big ones that people rely on. You can go online and you can see these things. You can see copies of what we're talking about. They're readily available and they can be seen. And they put them in these libraries so that people can see them as well, and scholars come and research and learn more about them. It's a little bit older than Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. It's dated to between 400 and 440 BC, AD. But think about that, y'all. That's still close to the original. That's still close to the original. I was going to give you this text, but I didn't have enough room to print it out. So when we talk about reliability, we say, here's a manuscript 400 years removed from the original. And you say, I don't know. Can I trust that? Well, if you know Sinaiticus has the earliest copy, then you can compare what Sinaiticus says to what Vaticanus says. You can see where there's any differences, right? Come to an understanding. But some of the greatest works that we accept without questioning, have far less attestation. Huh? Yeah, you got it. Than some of the great ones in history. Caesar's Galaic Wars were written between 100 and 44 BC. The earliest copy of that is from 900 AD. That's 1,000 years removed from the original writing that he wrote. But nobody questions whether or not it's accurate. They take it for granted. There's only 10 manuscripts of that book that are left that are 1,000 years old. But we take it for granted. The writings of Plato, as I mentioned, 427. I said 453. I was right. I was off. 427 to 347 BC. The earliest copy, again, is 900 AD. That's 1,200 years removed from the original writing of Plato. And there's only 7 manuscripts of that have been found. The New Testament is written one generation, or the copies, one generation removed from the time in which it was written. And there's 25,000 fragments. There's all these codexes, all this papyri, all this evidence. And look how little these have. Tacitus, we talked about Tacitus a couple lessons ago. He wrote in 100 AD. The earliest copy of his writing that we have is from 1100 AD. 1,100 years. And there's only 20 copies of that left in the world today. But nobody questions. Is it real? Did it really happen? Did it really take place? Is this what he really wrote? We take it for granted. Suetonius, we talked about him as well. He wrote between 75 and 160 AD. The earliest copy that we have is from 950 AD. That's 800 years removed, and there's only 8 copies. Well, how do we know that it's accurate? How do we know that that's what Suetonius was really writing? We only got 8 copies of it, 900 years removed. Maybe people changed it. Maybe people added to it. Nobody makes that argument. Nobody makes that argument. They accept it as being, yeah, this is reliable. Then why don't you give the New Testament writings the same degree of acceptance that you give these ancient writings? Because you got something against Christianity, because you don't want to add any proof to what is written in the Bible. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people don't want to do that. It's religion, and they don't want to do those things. But, and this is what I was talking about when I mentioned to you that, how we lose our kids when they go away to college, because they go into a philosophy class or they go into an ancient history class, and they got some preacher, a professor who's got tenure, so he can say whatever he wants to say. He's not going to get fired. And he gets up there and he starts downplaying Scripture. And he answers any question that these freshmen are going to throw at him, because he's been getting the same question for 40 years. And it shakes the faith of these people, But then if you tie him down and you say, well, there's only 8 manuscripts of Suetonius, why are you saying that those are accurate and the Bible's not? Then you start getting into, you see, and it just shakes the faith of these young people, because these professors are taking advantage of their limited knowledge. And it's sad, but it happens. Homer's Iliad, that great writing that he did, he wrote it in 500 BC. The closest copy that we have is 400 BC, 100 years removed. And so there's 643 of those left. And then when it comes to the New Testament, written from 40 to 100 AD, y'all, I take an early dating. This is a weird thing about me. This is a weird thing. I take an early dating to the New Testament. And I think it was written much earlier than we think. I think it was written before 70 AD. I know that's crazy, isn't it? And the reason I say is because there's no mention in the writings of the fall of Jerusalem. There's no mention that the high priests were done away with. There's no mention of that whatsoever. The book of Hebrews, it's as Jewish as you're going to get. No mention. No mention of their way of worship being wiped away. But anyway, that's me. So others have what's called a late dating. They date it between 40 and 100 AD. The earliest copy is from 125, so you see how close it is. That's just removed 25 to 50 years from the original. And there are 24,000 manuscripts. 24,000. Now you tell me which one has more attestation. Something that's got 24,000 manuscripts, or something that's got 7 or 8 or 20. The Bible, hands down, has more reliability than all of those great works, right? The next one is the Codex Washingtonianus. It contains the complete 4 Gospels. It's kept in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. is where it's kept. Oh, I forgot Tischendorf. The Codex Sinaiticus was discovered in 1844 by a man named Constantine van Tischendorf, and he's Indiana Jones of his time. He went on all these searches, all these great adventures. He was the Indiana Jones of his time. Don't tell me you knew him. Yeah, he's talking about the intertestamental period. Maccabees were leaders. It was a family, and they wrote, and there's accurate history in that as well. Accurate history from between the testaments. The Catholic Church includes some of that in their Bible that they have. But Maccabees is considered great history. Very good. And depending on how pure you are, there's definitely 1 and 2, but some have Maccabees 3 and 4, and some don't. But very accurate history, very accurate. There's also some good stories. Bell and the Dragon is a great story, man. It's a great bedtime story to tell your kids. But anyway, so Constantine van Tischendorf discovered the Codex Sinaiticus in 1844. He stopped by the monastery of St. Catherine, and he noticed that they were burning old sheets of paper. And he looked at them, and he's like, hey, wait a minute. This is the New Testament. And so they were just burning these papers. And so he got them, he collected them all together, and he lied to them about how valuable these things were. He lied to them so he could get possession of them. And he did. He did get possession of them. And so that's when you see that some of these nefarious ways that some of these codexes got, and he bought them, but he bought them for a real cheap. Oh, these are old. Nobody's really going to, you don't want to. Okay, I'll give you $50, And so Tischendorf was pretty smart. The Washingtonianus, it contains the complete 4 Gospels. It's in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. I want to say that I've seen it, but I just can't remember. I saw so many books. I've been to, the Smithsonian isn't one museum. It's a whole collection of museums. And they're free, by the way. Well, they're not free. You pay for them with your taxes. And I've been through their ancient book collection, but I can't remember if I've seen it, I'm sad to say that, but maybe I have and just don't know it. And so that's kept there in Washington. And then the last one is what we call papyrus fragments. And again, that's where P52 comes in, the oldest fragment that we've discovered from the Bible. It's John 18:31 through 33. Other important papyri are P66, P75, and P46, and many of those are from the 2nd and 3rd centuries. So we have a wealth of collection of these manuscripts that can be used to support the Bible that you're reading from today and that it's accurate. The Dead Sea Scrolls that we looked at last week, the Dead Sea Scrolls are in agreement with some spelling errors, with an agreement with the Old Testament that you're reading from today. In agreement with it. So that tells you how serious they took copying these things down, or how the hand of God was at work.
It's like when you look at both the King James and the New King James, the names are spelled differently in both of them, but they're still the same.
Yeah, they differ. King James and New King James differ. That's not.
The names can be spelled differently, but they're still the same.
Oh, they still agree. Yes, that's true. And you'll see. Is that the last bell? That is the last bell. All right. Well, thank you all very much.